In this video, we're going to talk about keeping your state in the URL instead of using useState in React. So when I Google something, let's say React jobs, you can see here in the URL, Google is adding something, and this is called a query string. And I can also get search results in a particular time frame. So I'm currently in Poland, so it's all Polish. But when you filter for a particular time frame, you will get another addition here to the query string. And you will see the same on many e-commerce websites as well. For example, here on the new for sale e-commerce template website, on the product page, we have colors and sizes. If I click on the black color, you can see something is added to the URL. If I click on the large size, we can see that this query string now has become even bigger. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, there are many benefits to doing this. Users can share this URL on chat or social media, and the person that they send this to can copy that link, can open it up, and they can get the exact same view. They can see the exact same color and the exact same size that you picked. A person can also bookmark the URL, right? So in browsers, I can bookmark here. I can come back to this later and I get the exact same view or UI that I have right now, right? Which is much faster than if I would bookmark just general URL. And then I would have to remember what options I picked to get the same UI. Now I can just bookmark this one and get the exact same UI. Users can then also use the back button. So if I try something else, for example, maybe I try a different color or a different size, and I think, oh no, the previous one looked better, I can just use the back button and it will go back to the previous UI. Or maybe the forward button. Oh no, I want to go back again. And now you can use the forward button. And sometimes you want to open up the URL in a new tab or new window. So I can just copy that, paste it, and get the exact same UI. Maybe your app is a bit slow, maybe something broke, and you just want to refresh. Hit refresh and I get the exact same UI. Sometimes you have tech-savvy users and they can manipulate the URL to get exactly what they want instead of interacting directly with your UI. So here I may know that white is a particular option and I can just use that. It's also good for SEO, search engine optimization. So Google can recognize that you have different views for this URL and may rank that appropriately in the search rankings. Sometimes a user just wants to save the URL for themselves, not bookmark it, but maybe they want to send it to themselves through email or they want to put it in a note-taking app to come back later. Sometimes a user wants to open it up on a new device. Maybe they were browsing on their mobile and they want to open it up on desktop. They just have to send the URL to themselves and they can open it up. And these days we also have server components in React and Next.js. And if you use useState in React, it has to become a client component. However, if you lift up the state to the URL, it can actually stay a server component. So for this tutorial, I want to walk through an example and I have replicated the Versailles e-commerce template. So here we have a t-shirt product page and it can have 3 different colors. So we have black, white, and blue, and it has 5 sizes. So I have 2 constants for those. I have color variants and I have size variants. Then on this product page, I just set the default selected color to black and the default selected size to medium. And then what we have in here on the left side, we're gonna have this image. So I have 3 different image URLs. So if the selected color is black, we use image URLs. I have to find that up here, it's not important, but black will automatically give me this URL here. White will give me the other URL and so on. So this will show the appropriate image for each color. And then these actual filters, here we have color and we have those 3 color variants. So I'm just mapping over them and creating a button for each one. So we have 3 buttons here for black, white, and blue. Let's see, they have a key, they have some styling here. So if they are the selected color, so here I'm going to check selected color, the default one here I have defined as black, right? Selected color is black as the default one. So if that black is actually the one that we're mapping over, then that one will get a blue border, right? So the selected variants will have a blue border. Now here I want to uppercase the first character, so I have to do some JavaScript magic here, just taking the first character, uppercasing it, and then connect it with the rest of the string. All right, so then for sizes, I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm just mapping over each size variant, creating a button for each one. We have a key, some styling. If the selected size, for example, MD is the default one, if that is the one that we're currently mapping over, we're going to add a blue border, otherwise just a gray border. And I'm uppercasing all of them, each character. So I made medium the default one, so selected size here is medium. But now what should happen if I click S or white? If I currently click on these buttons, nothing happens, right? This is completely static right now. So now what we could do is we could use useState to deal this state, right? So instead of hard coding selected color to always be black or selected size to always be medium, now we're going to manage that with useState. Let me comment this out. We're going to say selected color now is going to be a state variable. So I'm going to use useState here. I'm using line wrapping, so it wraps onto this part here, but it's part of the same line. And this is the default value for useState. Let's just make that black. And when I save here, actually we get an issue because I'm using useState state, and that's only possible in a client component. So let me convert this into a client component. I'm using Next.js here. So I'm saving here, and that should get rid of the error. So now we should also create one for selected size. We'll have the default be medium. So then I can remove these hard-coded variables, and now we should get the same result. So now when I click, still nothing happens because we are not using the setter function yet. Of course, when we click one of these buttons, we should invoke the setter function. So when we click on any of these buttons, for example, let's say the color buttons, we want to set the color to that color that we clicked on. I already get the suggestion, so I'm just going to accept this one. So when we click, this function runs, and it will just set the color to the color that we're mapping over. So it could be white, blue, black. So if I save now, if I now click on white, you can see the border changes as well as the image, because this will set the color to, let's see, it will set the selected color to white, which will re-render everything. So it's going to change the image here. And then also here for color variants, the selected color is now white. So it's the white button that gets that blue border. Let's do the same for the selected sizes. So when we click on any of these buttons, we can set the selected size to that size. So if I save here, now if I click on the other buttons, you can see it changes. So now we are changing the UI with useState. The problem with this is we don't get any of those benefits right now. So now if I want to share this with somebody else, let's say, I want to know, hey, what's your opinion on this white shirt in XS size? I want to be able to share that. But now if I share this URL and send it to somebody else, and they're going to open it up like this. So now they're going to open it like this, and they're going to see a black and medium UI now. Whereas I want to get their opinion on white and extra small, but they're going to see black and medium. And now let's say I want to bookmark this. If I would bookmark this and come back to this, it's basically just like a refresh. I would see black and medium instead of that white color. And now I think, oh, I want to see the previous one. I prefer the previous one. The back button won't work here, and the forward button neither, etc. So we want to put this state in the URL now. So whenever we make a change here, you could think, oh, well, we're going to use useEffect, because whenever one of these selected options changes, we want to synchronize with some external system. The external system here being the URL, right? The URL lives outside React, and in React we have useEffect to synchronize with something outside React. So here we can say useEffect, and you could say whenever those selected options change, we want to do something here with the URL. Let me import this like this. So whenever these change, we also want to put that in the URL now. And actually the browsers, they give us the so-called history API to interact with the URL. So what you could do is you could push this. So you could say window.history.pushState, for example. And the first argument here is going to be null. Then we have a weird empty string here for historical purposes. And then we can update the URL here. So we could say the color needs to be selected color and size is going to be selected size. So this entire thing is called a query string, and it has query parameters. So here you could say this is one query parameter, this is another one, and they're separated by this ampersand. And the whole query string is separated from the rest of the URL with this question mark here. So if I save here, and now when I click on white, you can see this URL here has updated. Let me make this a little bit wider. You can see now we have color is white and size is medium here in the URL. When I click on blue, the color changes to blue. When I change the size, it also updates. So now if I refresh, you can see it doesn't work yet. It just goes back to color black and size is medium, the default values we have. So this is just pushing it to the URL, but we also need to read it from the URL when we come back to it later. And you could do something with that in useEffect as well. And that's how many beginners would continue. The problem that you going to run into is now you're keeping the selected color both in useState here as well as in the URL. So you basically have two sources of truth now that you need to awkwardly synchronize. That's the first problem here. And another problem is we are using this native solution from browsers, but if you're using a framework like Next.js, you will already have some solution out of the box. That's just going to be a better option to work with these URLs. So to achieve the same with the Next.js router here, we can say const router. We're going to use a router here from Next.js, and I'm using the Next.js app directory, so make sure you are importing this from Next navigation. Then I can use that here, instantiate it here essentially, and then I can say router.push, and here it's going to be the same string. Now with Next.js, now we are navigating programmatically, and Next.js will automatically scroll to the top of the page if you navigate. So here we have a second argument where we can undo that, because here when we click, we don't want to scroll to the top, so we can say scroll is false. Now I also also need to add the router here to the dependency array. Now if I save here and let me just undo all of this for a clean slate, we're going to get the default values here. That's fine. But now if I click, you can see it still works. And now I'm using the solution from Next.js. This is recommended because this is also integrated with, for example, the link component. So you have one standard solution for all of your navigation instead of going around there with window history. But now the problem is, of course, if I go to the back button, this doesn't work yet, right? So here, this is just pushing it to the URL. We're just adding to the URL. We're updating the URL now whenever we make a change here. But of course, when we come back to this URL, we also need to read from the URL now. And we could try doing that here as well. There is also a native browser solution to read these search params from the URL, and that's called window.location.search. So with this, you can read the search parameters, right? So again, this entire thing is called a query string. A query string consists of query parameters. So you could say that this one thing is a query param or parameter. This size is another query parameter or query param. They are separated with this ampersand, and the whole query string is separated from the rest of the URL with this question mark. So people will refer to this as a query string or query parameters or even search parameters. Now in a URL, you also have path parameters. So here in this URL, I have /product and then /t-shirt. You could say that's a path parameter. It's part of the path. And then after the question mark, you have the query string. So we could use the native browser solution to read the data from the URL, but Next.js also helps us out with reading. We have something called useSearchParams in client components, and this will give you the search parameters in the URL. Now, right now you can see it starts to become messy because we are trying to synchronize here ourselves with useEffect. We have useState here. We now also have useRouter, and this becomes a very messy setup very quickly. And the reason is essentially that we're trying to keep track of it in two ways now. We have our own useState, and then we also have the state in the URL. So two sources of truth. And that's not what you want. You want one source of truth. So we need to make a decision here which one we keep. And of course, we're going to keep the state in the URL. So let's remove all of this now from useState and all of this useEffect as well. And we're going to just treat the state in the URL as the one source of truth. So I can even get rid of useState, useEffect, and all of these imports here. Now we get an error. It's saying selected color is not defined. So now how do we get this selected color from the URL? Copilot wants to give me useState again, but that's not what we're going to use now. So we can use a hook from Next.js. It's called useSearchParams. Let me import this from Next Navigation, not React Router DOM, from Next Navigation. And this will give us the search params from the URL. So the selected color, we can then use searchParams.get, and then it's the color parameter. So if we do this, if I save here, that error is gone, and then we can duplicate this for the selected size. SearchParams.get for size. So now if I save here, you can see we actually get wide and small here, which is the same as in the URL. Now if I change the color to black in the URL, you can see we get the right color. If I change the size to XL and the color to blue, if I go there, you can see we get the right UI here, because we can just read this from the URL. And this is data that the browser will give us. We don't need to use useState. Now, what happens if I click black here? If I now click on any of these buttons, I'm going to get an error because now we're only reading from the URL, but now we also need to update the URL properly. And here we're still using that on-click handler with setting the color in the useState. So I get these errors. So we could use the router again and do router.push. That's how you programmatically can add something to the URL with Next.js. But Next.js actually provides you something else that you can actually also use here, which is simply the link component, right? So this is used for navigation, and if you click on that, Next.js will update the URL. It will manage all of that URL state for you as well. It will just add that. So here we can just specify an href. So we can say href is going to be a query string, and let's see. So color is going to become whatever the color is that we're mapping over here, right? So this is for color variant. So if I click black here, it should become black, and otherwise it should become white, and the size should stay the same, right? So when I click black, the size should still stay this XL, the selected size. So we can say size is simply going to be selected size. size. So if I save here, I do need to import the link component, of course. So then let me save here. And now if I click on any of these color buttons, you can see the URL is updated. And because the URL updates and we are using searchParams here, it will re-render our component. So we get the new searchParams and we get the new selected color, right? We get black here. And so all of this UI here will be properly updated. So let's do the same for the size here. Instead of a button, we will just simply use this next link and the href here. Let's see if Copilot can, Copilot knows what we want to do here. So I'm gonna save here, right? So when I click on any of these sizes, the color should stay the same. So that should still be that selected color that we already have. The size should become the size that we are currently mapping. So here now, if I click medium, you can see it properly updates here. And I get a strange error here. So let me just refresh here for a clean slate. I still get an error here because I have this on click. I should just remove that. That was from the useState solution that we had before. So now let me refresh here. We have black and size is large. So that's working. Now if I update the color, it works. If I update the size, everything is working now. So now I can send this to somebody else. I can ask, what do you think of this white shirt in XL format? That person is going to open it up and they're going to see this, the exact same UI that I was looking at. Let me close this. Let me close this tab as well. And also now when I click around here and I'm like, no, maybe the blue one was better. So now I can go back. I can navigate through the choices that I was looking at with back and forward buttons. I can open it up in a new tab or new window. Maybe I was browsing on mobile. I want to open it up on desktop. I can send it to myself. I can bookmark it and come back to it, right? Bookmarking, you essentially just refreshing and you can see we get the exact same UI and we get all of those other benefits that I mentioned at the start of this video. Now, one other cool thing is this can actually stay a server component. So here we're using useSearchParams. So this is all managed client side. And so this needs to become a client component, but you can also get access to these search parameters on the server. So if I remove this and I even remove use client now, so now this is a server component, I can remove this. So on the server, you actually get that as props. So here you get searchParams as a prop. And then the syntax is a bit different here. So now it's not this get method to get the color. It's just a property itself on that searchParams object. So we get size like this. Now if I save here, this is now a server component. And if I refresh here, you can see it still works the exact same. Everything is still working and it's a server component now instead of a client component. Now I'm getting red squiggly lines here from TypeScript. So typically you do want to type your props. Type for searchParams. I'm getting this from the Next.js documentation. So it's a bit of a complicated type here, but this is what that would look like. Now there are some other important things that you need to be aware of. So maybe somebody is sending me this and I'm going to go look at through some options. And now I want to go back to, let's say, the chat. I have to go through all of these options that I just looked through because now with link, it's the same as programmatically pushing to that route. So with that router that we saw before, you can do router.push. This will actually add a so-called entry into your history of URLs. So then when you use back and forward, you have to go through each of those entries. That's what you get with the link component. If that's not suitable for your use case, you can also use replace. Replacing will not add an entry to that history set of entries, so you will immediately go back to that page. Another thing to be aware of is that some people may actually change the URL. So they may change this to, let's say, purple. That's a color that doesn't exist here. So now we get selected color is purple and we don't have an image for purple. So we don't see an image and it may cause other issues as well. You may want to validate the data that you get from the URL with, for example, Zod or some other schema validator. People may actually also remove this from the URL. So you may also want to have some default values. So here .color is nothing. So here we can also say or black or let's say medium. So now when you go here, you will actually see some default state. Another important thing to be aware of is that the URL is always a string. And sometimes you're going to have strange characters that need to be so-called URL encoded. So here when we set the URL, usually you want to be a bit careful because let's say the color has some colon in the name, right? Maybe we have black and this is from some collection from the fall, let's say black from the fall. So now if I save here and I try to add this to the URL, you're going to have this colon and you may have other characters in the URL here. This is just an example. Let me undo this. So typically you want to encode these properly for the URL and the browser helps you out here. So instead of specifying the href like this, you may want to do it as follows. So you still have this. And then for the actual query params, you can use new URL URL-searchParams. And here, that's a function, so you pass that, and it expects an object here. You can specify for each query param what the value should be. So color should be color, or you can just write color in JavaScript if you have the same name there. And size should still be selected size. And I'm missing a curly brace here. So this is a safer way of updating the URL. Now I do get an issue here from TypeScript, and I think it's because here where we get the selected size here, the type is going to be a string or an array of strings. So here it may actually be an array of strings, and it's telling us, hey, you cannot assign an array of strings here, so it needs to be actually a string. So here when we get it from the URL, we know it's not going to be an array. You may want to validate this more thoroughly, but here of course you can actually assert that it's going to be a string. I do need to use these parentheses here, otherwise it won't work. So let me also do that for the other one. So here it's just going to be a single string, and that should get rid of that issue. Yeah. So now when I click here in the color, it still works. It still properly updates. If I refresh, we still get the correct data here. So if I do blue, it still gets the correct color. And we can do the same for the size. Let's see, just replace this. And here color should stay the already selected color, and size should become whatever we are mapping over here. And we can just leave that off in JavaScript. So now if I just refresh here and I click around, everything is still working as it should. Right, so this is really useful. So whenever you have some kind of detail page, such as here an e-commerce product page or search results page, or like a data table, another good use case, or even something like a modal in the open or closing state, you can put that state in the URL, treat the state in the URL as the single source of truth. You can make it a client component, it can even stay a server component, and you get all of those benefits. So it can have filter parameters. You can also do it for sorting or pagination or for search queries. All sorts of data can be put in the URL, and you get all of these benefits that we saw at the beginning of the video. So I hope this was helpful. Hope that you learned something. My React Next.js course is coming out soon. Make sure you're subscribed on the email list to get a notification and a discount. Make sure you've mastered the fundamentals of both JavaScript as well as CSS. I have courses on them both. Check out the links in the description. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.